LEXICON, LEXICON for ethics, integrity, and aptitude. Syllabus Syllabus of Ethics, Integrity, and Aptitude. This paper will include questions to test the candidate's attitudes and approach to issues relating to integrity, probability in public life, and his problem-solving approach to various issues and conflict faced by him in dealing with society. Question may utilize the case studies approach to determine these aspects. The following broad area will be covered: ethics and human interface, essence, determinants, and consequence of ethics in human actions, dimension of ethics, ethics in private and public relationship, human value, lesson from the lives and teaching of great leaders, reformers, and administrators, role of families, society, and educational institution in cultivating values. Attitudes contain structures, functions, its influence and relation with thoughts and behavior, moral and political attitude, social influence and persuasions, aptitudes and functional foundation for exams, integrity, impartiality and non-partisanship, objectivity, dedication to public service, empathy, tolerance, and compassion towards the weaker sections, emotional intelligence concepts and the utility and application in administration governance, contribution of moral thinkers and philosophers from India and the world, public or civil service value and ethics in public administration, status and problems, ethical concerns and dilemma in government and private institutions, law, rules, regulation, and conscience as sources of ethical guidance, accountability and ethical governance, strengthens of ethical and moral value in governance, ethical issues in international relation and funding of corporate governance, probities in governance, concept of public service, philosophical basis of governance and probability, information sharing and transparency, and governance right to informations, code of ethics, codes of conduct, citizen charters, work culture, quality of service delivery, utilizations of public funds, challenge of corruptions, case study on above issue, content, unit name, chapter 1, ethics and human interface, second, attitude, third, aptitude and foundational value for civil service, emotional intelligence, contribution of moral thinker and philosopher from Indians and world, public service value and ethics in public administration, probity in governance case studies, 2013 GS paper 4th with solution index, ethics and human interface chapter 1. After reading this unit, you will be able to understand ethics and its scopes. Ethics and its scopes, essence, determinants, and consequence of ethics in human actions. Dimensions of ethics, ethics in public and private relationships, human values, lesson from the lives and teaching of great reformer administrators, role of family, society, and educational institution in calculating values. Ethics. Ethics may be defined as systematic studies of human actions from the point of view of their rightfulness or wrongfulness. As a mean for attainment of the ultimate happiness, it is the reflective study of what is good or bad in the part of human conduct for which human has some personal responsibility. In other words, ethics is a set of standards that a society places on itself and which help guide behaviors, choice, and actions. Ethics in integrals is integrals of public administration. In public administration, ethics focus on how public administrators should question and reflect in order to be able to act responsibly. Scopes of ethics. Ethics deals with voluntary actions. We can distinguish between human actions and action of human. Human actions are those actions that are done by human consciously, deliberately, and in view of an end. Actions of human may not be willfully, voluntarily, consciously, and deliberately done, but all the same they are done by humans. Examples sleeping, walking, etc. It is the intention which makes the difference between human actions and action of human. In ethics, we deals only with the human actions. What ethics is not. Ethics is not morality. Morality can be individual set of commitment even when they are rejected by others. But one cannot be ethical alone. Ethics brings others people for the realization of the self. Morality does not demand acquiescence from others the way ethics does. It is possible to be moral alone. A moralist can say, I do not believe in war, so what if everyone else does? Ethics is not religion. Many people are not religious, but ethics applies to everyone. Most religions do advocate high ethical standards, but sometimes do not address all the type of problem we face. Ethics is not following the law. In law, the man is guilty when he violates the right of another. In ethics, he is guilty if he thinks of doing so. Immanuel Kant. A system A good system of law does incorporate many ethical standards, but law can deviate from with what is ethical. Law may have a difficult time designing or enforcing standards in some important area and may be slow to address the new problems. Ethics is not following culturally accepted norms. Some cultures are quite ethical, others become corrupt or bind to certain ethical concern. United States versus slavery before the Civil War. Caste systems in India. When in Rome, do as the Roman do is not satisfactorily ethical standard. Why be moral? Not few are the people who ask this question. Why should we be moral? Why should we take part in the moral institutions of life? Why should we adopt a moral point of view? In every human person, there is a deep desire for good. Human beings by nature tend to good. Summum bonum. Each man or woman desire what is best for himself or herself. The ethical principles and moral practice helps one to attain what is best. It helps a person to perfect himself or herself as a moral being. Morality has to do more with one interior self than the practice of some customs or set rules. Viewed from these points, morality is a deep down desire in human person and is something to do with the very nature of human person. The rational nature of human person make him or her aware of certain fundamental principles of logical and moral reasoning. This means that there is not only a subjective aspect to every human action, but also an objective one that prompts human persons to base himself herself on certain common principles. We also find that for the functioning of any society, we need certain rules and regulations. The conditions of a satisfactory human life for people living in group could hardly obtain otherwise. Neither a state of nature nor a totalitarian state. The institutions which are designed to make life easier and better for humankind cannot function without certain moral principles. However, Here, the question of individual freedom can also come in. How far the society can go on demanding, shouldn't it respect freedom of the individual? Is morality made for man, or man is made for morality? Morality is a lot like nutrition. Most of us have never had a course in nutrition or even read as much about it. Yet, many of us do have some general knowledge of the field of what we need to eat and what not. However, we also make mistakes about these things, often thinking of the good a particular diet can do in long run for our health. We may go for all it although it may bring no immediate satisfaction. So too is our moral life. While nutrition focuses on our physical health, morality is concerned about our moral health. It's safe to help us determine what will nourish our moral life and what will poison it. It seeks to enhance our life, to help us to live better lives. Morality aims to provide us with a common point of view from which we can come to agreement about what all of us ought to do. It tries to discourse of more objective standpoints of evaluation than that of your personal preference. Branches of ethics. There are four branches of ethics, namely descriptive ethics, normative ethics, metaethics, ethics, applied ethics. Descriptive ethics. Descriptive ethics is a study of people's belief about morality. It involves empirical investigation. It gives us a general pattern or way of life of people in different type of communities. Descriptive ethics study the historical and evolution of ethics. It gives a record of certain taboos, customs, or conventions. For example, it states the history of various institutions like family or marriage. Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral consciousness is an example of descriptive ethics. See Unit 5 for Kohlberg theory. Descriptive ethics investigates people's ethical ideals or what actions are condemned in a society. It aims to find out people's belief about values, which actions are right and wrong, and which characteristics of moral agent are virtuous. Descriptive ethics seeks the explanation of actual choice made by moral agent in practice. It tries to examine the ethical code applied by various groups. Descriptive ethics is a value-free approach to ethics. It is empirical investigation of people's moral belief. Normative ethics. Normative ethics involve arriving at the moral standard. They regulate right and wrong conduct. In a sense, it is a search for an ideal litmus test of proper behavior. Normative ethics is also called as prescriptive ethics. It is the study of ethical theories that prescribe how people ought to act. It examines standards for the rightness and wrongness of actions. Normative ethics suggests punishment when a person deviates from the path of ideals. It provides justification for punishing a person who disturbs social and moral order. It tries to establish certain theory on the guidelines of some norms. Normative ethics offer the moral principle to use to resolve difficult moral decisions. Aristotle virtue ethics, Kant deontological ethics, Mill's consequential utilitarianism, and Bhagavad Gita, Nishkam Karma Yoga are the theory in normative ethics. These have been explained in Unit 5. The golden rule is a classic example of normative principle. We should do to others what we would want others to do to us. We should do to others what we would want others to do to us. Since one would want people to feed him if he was starving, then he should help feed starving feed starving people. Using this same reasoning, we can theoretically determine whether any possible action is right or wrong. So, based on golden rule, it would also be wrong for a person to lie, to harass, victimize, or kill others. The golden rule is an example of a normative theory that establishes a single principle against which we judge all action. The normative theory focuses on a set of foundational principles or a set of good characters traits. Metaethics. Metaethics is defined as a study of the origin meaning of ethical concept. The term meta means after or beyond, and consequently the notion of metaethics involves a removed or bird eye view of the entire project of ethics. In metaethics, two issues are prominent: metaphysical issue concerning whether morality exists independently of human, and second, psychological issue concerning the underlying mental basis of our moral judgments and conduct. In other words, metaethics is a study of what ethical terms and theory actually refer. It determines the validity of theory advanced in normative ethics. We use certain moral concepts such as right, wrong, good, or bad to evaluate human action. These moral concepts are used as a good in passing moral judgment. Meta-ethical analysis ethical concepts. Study the meaning of moral language and the metaphysics of moral facts. Metaethics seeks to understand the nature of ethical properties and evaluations. Metaethics deals with questions such as what is the meaning of moral terms or judgments? What is the nature of moral judgments? How may moral judgments be supported or defended? Applied ethics. Applied ethics is a branch of ethics which consists of the analysis of specific controversial moral issues such as abortion, animal rights, or euthanasia. It helps to use knowledge of moral principles to prevent dilemmas. There are certain issues which arise due to newly adopted lifestyles. Applied ethics deals with the questions such as: is getting an abortion immoral? Is euthanasia immoral? Is affirmative action right or wrong? What are human rights and how do we determine them? Do animals have the right as well? Do individuals have the right of self-determinations? Two features are necessary for an issue to be considered an applied ethical issue. First, the issue needs to be controversial in the sense that there are significant group of people both for and against the issue at hand. The second requirement for an issue to be an applied ethical issue is that it must be distinctly moral issue and not just a social controversy. Determinants of ethical behavior. There are three main influences that determine the ethical behavior and decisions. Individual personality traits, individual value system, upbringing, education, religious belief, experience, etc. Culture or country of an individual, organization or industry, prevailing ethics of the organization or industry an individual work for. Determinants of ethics in governance. The level of ethics in governance are dependent on social, economic, political, cultural, legal, judicial, and historical context of the country. This specific factor influence ethics in public administrative system. Ethics, whether in an entire society or in a social subsystem, evolve over a long period of time and is influenced during its nurturance and growth. A variety of environmental factors such as historical, social, cultural, legal, judicial, political, and economical. Values. Values are individual principle or quality that guide judgments and behavior of a person or a group. Values are like an anchor in a ship. When a storm comes, the ship is not swept away by strong currents, but remain anchored to the shore. A person with strong value or character stick to his principle and is not swept away in crisis or under pressures. Values flow from the highest of our own self. For each one of us, there are values rooted in finest part of the self from where we read it outward. These values are in an inbuilt mechanism which distinguish the right from the wrong, the do's and don'ts of any actions, even when no one is looking. Values are concerned with character and conduct of a person and evaluate the voluntary and habitual action of individual with reference to their being right or wrong. There is another view on the value that is self-managing mechanism is not innate, but it is acquired from the environment by continuous teaching and behavior of others, especially the superior in age and status, as pursued by an individual. We cannot deny the impact of environment, society, and family on an individual for the value he imbibes. At the same time, we cannot deny the fact that sources of value is within, which guide one in making choices in acquisition of learning from the environment. We can say that there are uniform universally values inbuilt in each one of us. They flow out of the highest of our own self, our ultimate holistic potentials. They refer to our intrinsic humanness. The individual or personal value vary to the extent one is conscious toward these inner sources and the extent to which one tend to compromise with it in given culture environment and other compulsion. Those both the sources within and the cultural environment are important for inculcations of values. Intrinsic values and extrinsic values. Values can be viewed from the standpoints of their importance. All value and experience of different degree of importance in the development of individuality. So we classify value on the basis of importance these values have. An intrinsic value is one which has a worth in its own right. It is an truth, beauty, goodness, temperance, and courage, etc., are considered an intrinsic value. They are good not because of their consequence, but because they are good in themselves. This value retain even if they were in existence completely alone. Intrinsic value are made to be absolute value. An extrinsic value is one which is mean to some other value. It is of the instrumental worth only. A pair of spectacles is good only if there are eyes behind spectacle to see through them. The spectacles have instrumental values. Extrinsic or instrumental value are the part of a larger whole. They are mean to an end. Wealth, fame, physical fitness, etc. borrow their worth from something extraneous to them. The term extrinsic and intrinsic are used relatively. They are not always mutually exclusive or fixed. What is valued by one person for its own sake may be valued by another person as a mean to end. Value can be graded as positive value and negative values, productive values and unproductive values, permanent values and transient values. In general, intrinsic value are rated higher than extrinsic value. Positive value are preferred to negative values. The locus of value is the human mind. It is a special sort of reaction to the environment. Human mind has three psychic functions: aspects, thinking, feelings, and willing. The value correspondingly to this function are intellectual value, truth, aesthetic values, beauty and moral values. Goodness, truth, beauty, and goods are universal values. Morality and ethics. Moral is related to issue of right or wrong and to how individuals should behave. Therefore, morality means standard of conduct that are accepted as right or proper. It is based on personal concerns rather than what law says. Ethics and morals seem to appear similar on the face of it, but if one analyzes deeply, there is subtle difference. Ethics define the code that the society or group of people adhere to, while morality dwells in the right and wrong and at much deeper level, both personal and spiritual. Moral define personal characters, while ethics stress a social system in which those morals are applied. Ethics, value, and moral. Ethics can also be defined as prepositional statements, standards that are used by members of a profession or a group to determine what the right course of action in a situation is. Ethics rely on logical and rational criteria to reach a decision, an essentially cognitive process. Value, on the other hand, describe idea that we value a price to value something, meaning that we hold it dear and feel it has worth to us. As a result, there is often a feeling or affective component associated with value. Often, values are ideas that we aspire to achieve, like equality and social justice. Moral describe a behavioral code of conduct to which an individual ascribes. They are used to negotiate support and strengthen our relationship with others. Value system. Value constitute an important aspect of self-concept and serve as a guiding principle for an individual. Considered together, values form value system. A value system is an enduring organizational belief concerning preferable modes of conduct or end states of existence along a continuum of importance. The importance of different values co-vary with importance of others in the value system. For example, one may value honesty over success. Ethics in public administration. The notion of ethics has expanded itself to involve all major realm of human existence. Here, an attempt is made to outline certain salient aspects of ethics in public administration. Broadly, they could be summarized as following maxims. Maxim of legality and rationality. An administrator will follow the law and rules that are framed to govern and guide various categories of policy and decisions. Maxim of responsibility and accountability. An administrator would not hesitate to accept responsibility for his decisions and actions. He would hold himself morally responsible for his action and for use of this discretion while making decisions. Moreover, he would be willing to be held accountable to higher authority of governance and even to the people who are the ultimate beneficiary of his decisions and actions. Maxims of work commitment. An administrator would be committed to his duty and perform his work with involvement, intelligence, and dexterity. As Swami Vivekananda has observed, every duty is holy and devotion to duty is the highest form of worship. This would also entail respect for time, punctuality, and fulfillment of promise made. Work is considered not as a burden but as an opportunity to serve and constructively contribute to society. Maxim of excellence. An administrator will ensure the highest standard of quality in administrative decisions and actions would not compromise with standard because of convenience or complacency. In a competitive international environment, an administrative system should faithfully adhere to the requirements of total quality management, maximum of infusion. An administrator would rationally bring about a fusion of individual, organization, and social goals to help evolve unisons of ideas and imbibe in his behavior a commitment to such a fusion. In the situation of conflicting goals, a concern for ethics should govern the choice made. Maxim of responsiveness and resilience. An administrator would respond effectively to the demand and challenges from the external as well as internal environment. He would adapt an environmental transformation and yet sustain the ethical norm of conduct. In situation of deviation from the prescribed ethical norms, the administrative system will show resilience and bounce back into accept the ethical mold at the earliest opportunities. Maxim of utilitarianism. While making and implementing policy and decision, an administrator will ensure that this lead to the greatest good happiness and benefit of the greatest number. Maxim of compassion. An administrator, without violating the prescribed law and rules, would demonstrate compassion for the poor, the disabled, and the weak, while using discretion in making decisions. At least he would not grant any benefit to the stronger section of society, only because they are strong and would not deny the due consideration to the weak, despite their weakness. Maxim of national interest. Though universalistics in orientation and liberal in outlook, while performing his duty, would keep in view the impact of this action on his nation's strength and prestige. The Japanese, Korean, the German, and Chinese citizens, including while performing the official role, have at the back of their mind a concern and respect for their nations. This automatically raises the level of service rendered and product delivered. Maximum of justice is responsible for formulation and execution of policy and decisions of governance would ensure that respect is shown to the principle of equality, equity, and fairness, impartiality, and objective, and no special favor are doled out on the criteria of status, position, power, gender, class, caste, or wealth. Maxim and transparency, an administrator will make decisions and implement them in transparent manner so that those affected by the decisions and those who wish to evaluate the rationales will be able to understand the reason behind such decisions and the sources of information on which these decisions were made. Maxim of integrity, and administrators would undertake an administrative action on the basis of honesty and not use his power, position, discretion to serve his personal interests and the illegitimate interests of other individuals or the groups. Public relation have now become a vital function, affecting management decision and influence public opinion. in every public or private organization. Today, it is indispensable for any organization. The reason for it being so are as follow: recognition of right of expression and freedom of information, advance in telecommunications and transport, opening up traditional closed society and increasing globalization, government employing public relation practice for staying in power for development tasks, etc. Growth in business, amalgamation, collaborations, operating with subsidiaries spreading across national boundaries and in different cultures. Ethics in public relations. Public relations recognize long-term responsibility and seek to pursue to achieve mutual understanding by securing the winning acceptance of attitudes and ideas. It can succeed only when the basic policy is ethical and the mean used as truthful in public relation. The end can never justify the use of false, harmful, or questionable means. However, it is a difficult task to describe what is ethical and what is unethical. It would be simpler to state it as a matter of choosing between the right and wrong option in keeping with conscience. Anything that causes dissonance in the mind brings about feeling of a guilt and dishonesty. And dishonest communication cannot be in aid of cementing relationship. Public also not to be underestimated as fool. As Abraham Lincoln said, you can fool some people all the time and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all of the time. There are a number of acts that would be classified as unethical, ranging from suppressing of news to misleading the audience. Unethical acts in public relations may include suppressing unfavorable news, misrepresenting facts, postponing to serve a cause while actually serving some other interest, promising results that cannot be obtained, use of undesirable method towards pressuring editors for carrying publicity material. With increased education, the consumer and public have become aware of their right, and a public relation person may have to deal with pressure groups like trade union, consumer protection groups, environment protection activity, etc. Therefore, it is imperative for public relation practitioner to be self-regulating, ethical, as also be careful about the legal aspect of communications. Value in public relationship. The importance of articulating ethics and the value that define underpin public service cannot be underscored. This is seen as critical to providing both public officials and the public with a common frame of reference regarding the principle and standard to be applied, and in assessing public officials to develop an appreciation of the ethical issue involved in effective and efficient public service delivery. An example of the importance attached to the above mentioned ethical principle is found in the seventh principle of public life, given by the Northern Committee in the United Kingdom. These principles are as follows: selfless holders of public office should take decisions solely in terms of public interest. They should not to do so in order to gain financial or other benefit for themselves, their family, or their friends. Integrity. Holders to public office should not place themselves under any financial or other obligation to outside individual or organization that may influence them in the performance of their official duties. Objectivity in carrying out public business, including making public appointments, awarding contracts, or recommending individuals for rewards and benefit. Holders of public office should make of choice on merit. Accountability. Holders of public office are accountable for their decisions and action to the public and must submit themselves to whatever scrutiny is appropriate to the officers. Openness. Holder of public office should be as open as possible about all decisions and actions that they take. They should not give reason for their decision and restrict information only when the wider public interest clearly demands. Honesty. Holders of public office have a duty to declare any private interests relating to their public duties and to take steps to resolve any conflict arising in a way that protect the public interest. Leadership. Holders of public office should promote and support this principle by leadership and example. Human value. The value according to or against which we act are the unavoidable and essential element of all important decisions in the human arena. Value are the link that ties together personal perception, perception, judgments, motive, and action. The same apply in understanding social and political life. Make or break ideas is the value of percept and their various practical consequences in a life are at least as fundamental to understanding man and society as are the much vaunted physical necessities. They are also essential in improving man and society too. The great predominance of violence, war, hate crime in some societies and eras of history may seem to refute the universality of human values. However, the value to do go back to the earliest record human society and religion and how somehow persisted throughout all the years and all the culture in this sense. They are universally added to which is the evolutionary nature of the human being and civilization, whereby the assertion of this value become eventually more and more secure, and now on an interactive global scale through the international law and practice.